Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Tom welcoming you to another study in the Word. We're doing our second session on. We're doing this. I'm calling it actually this Wild Times with an Awesome God. My life's been wild. It's it's an interesting life story. I'm hoping that I won't bore you, but there's a lot to be learned, and we learned in our last session a little bit about what it was like in 1960s. Um, the music, the Beatles came out, everything changed, AM radio. A little later on, 4 or 5 years down the road, even some FM channels started, especially in what they would call colleges. So I got done in Colorado. We were done in Colorado, and there was my dad had to move to California. That was the next move we had to make. And so we were going to move to California, which we had been to before, and it was very California, Central California, Santa Cruz. You might recognize that. Okay, San Jose was a little bit north. Um, Santa Cruz, California. Monterey was a little bit south. Right out from there, right in the middle of there is this inland, just a little bit, Watsonville, which is well known for agriculture. And then we lived in a little just a village. It was just 700 people uh, outside of Watsonville called Aromas. That's where we moved. Yeah, and Aromas was that's means smell, and it's bad smell. It didn't smell bad there. I don't know why they named it that, but anyway, it was a small town, just like where we came from in Colorado. Small town. I don't know how much it had. Maybe 700 there in Colorado. Maybe 2,000 or 3,000. So California, Colorado, there was you had a lot of potatoes, you had a lot of tobacco. We used to catch the locusts and put them in cans, grasshoppers that were eating the tobacco, and then we'd roast them in the incinerator. I know that little boys do weird stuff, right? But they were quite good because of the tobacco taste would kind of like marinate them or something, smoky flavor. Anyway, so uh, when we went to Aromas, California, this was even smaller, and it's a little place out there next to a little bit north of a river that run through there, quarry that run through there, and there's not much to it other than that. Just a few, actually, just very few roads that went up into the woods, up into the hill country there that was pretty out there, and so that's what it was like. That's where we lived, and I loved it. It was a great place, just like Colorado. A little bit different in the sense that, a little bit uh, cooler, actually, because it was not that far from the beach. So we still got fog. This is why they could grow strawberries there so well. Driscoll strawberries is there. Will come into my story later. Um, but I tell you something that was interesting about Romas and California. California has everything. If you go out there and you look around, just drive up and down California, even today, because we're out there every year. Wow. Almonds, lettuce, green beans, strawberries, all kinds of berries, flowers, garlic, lots of fruit. I mean, that area had everything. And so, of course, my father was going to end up there in that area because that's a real big place. Aromas was small. It had one church. It had one grocery store that had the only gas pump. So, one grocery store, one gas pump, rolling green hills, lots of eucalyptus trees, lots of oak trees, and Santa Cruz down was right down the road. The beach was only 20 minutes away. You had Monterey, Santa Cruz, all of those places. The beach and boardwalk at Santa Cruz. It was quite a place to grow up. The beach, mom would spend a lot of time with us at the beach. We learned how to swim before we learned how to walk. And so we were in the water all the time. Now, this is California. And for the first time, um, started hearing and understanding things that were evil. All right, I'm not putting California down. California at the time was very conservative, but it was where we started to hear more at that time. We heard about the first serial killers. I remember a guy went in and killed a bunch of nurses. I can't remember the name of that particular. It's famous. And we had a on our road up Carr Avenue, which goes up into the hills, and who knows what's out in there sometimes. Um, some guy had dropped a body off in a gunny sack, chopped up body, and set it on fire. That was shocking. That stuff was shocking to us. Even lost some sleep over that. And so that's how it was. Very small. Most people knew each other. One church, as I said. It just now we school was a little bit different in the sense that things had unfortunately, they say progressed, but not degressed really. No more spanking in the school at that time, and things started getting there started to be more trouble. The little school I went to though was God hardly any kids. We all knew each other. I was the second biggest kid. My best friend was the biggest kid, and so we got along pretty good there. And but we would never again. You were not spending time inside. This is one of the things I wanted to hit the kids with. They listen to this. We were outside and we played basketball, baseball, football, you name it. And I was involved in it. I was a good athlete, not a great athlete, but a good athlete. But there, I was a great athlete. When we moved to Concord, our next move, all of a sudden I realized I'm not as good as I thought I was because we just didn't have the kids and the talent they do out, in the bigger city. So I'm not trying to confuse you, but I did play. I was a good basketball player. I remember playing basketball. I was a forward. I had a good corner shot, and I was a good rebounder. Then and then we played baseball, and I was an outstanding baseball player. Could hit the ball a country mile. Loved playing baseball. Just loved everything about baseball. And football too. We played a lot of football. We watched a lot of football. I became an Oakland Raider fan. Right, that's where my dad was eventually going to work. It was in Concord, which is up the road a ways, but I became a Raider fan. My dad became a 49er fan. And so, because of my dad's profession, I got to go out every year to both of the Raiders and the 49ers camp, meet all the players, ask questions. That was quite something. I remember doing that. I remember walking into a Raiders dressing room, and in there was a great player named Fred Blitnikoff, who was a wide receiver or flanker back, great catcher of the ball, and one of the best all-time greats. And he was sitting there smoking a cigarette. He was a real nervous guy. It was funny because that just didn't compute in my head as far as football players. But anyway, so that was fun. But um, I had a great time. We would run the hills. I'd get on a backpack or something with some water and go into the hills and walk up there, literally for miles, miles and miles. We're not talking 5, 10 miles. Sometimes maybe even 20 miles. You know, sometimes I even spend the night out in these places and then come back. And I was just a kid. But my parents back then they understood us a little bit better. They knew me. They knew I'd like to go up there, so they didn't get too upset about it if I was late. And so that was fun. And then we go fishing, and we all had bikes, and we go down to the river and we fish, and I had guns. I had a 12 gauge shotgun I took with me down to the river, and we'd blow stuff up. Nobody cared. If the cops came over there, we all knew them, and they just say, "Well, don't shoot the fish or something." And it was pretty laid back that way. I had my first little girlfriend there. I remember actually two of them. One was a blonde, one was brunette. See, and one was named Sandy, and the other's name was Dorothy. And I really liked them, and I really wonder what happened to them. Uh, I do remember that when I married Stella, we came back in that way, and we actually went in and we were working out where there's some kind of workout thing going on. At the time, we were really into that, and we were working out, and they were there, and so they were looking at me like, "Who's that girl he's with?" Well, it was my wife, and of course we all got a little bit older. So anyway, it was interesting. But anyway, uh, that was my life. My life was just running, playing sports. I made all the all league teams, all that kind of stuff. And I had a friend there that I played against or with for many years. His name was Bob Firebaugh. What a name for a baseball player. He was a great pitcher, great hitter. And we used to have these great competitions because he'd always have to guard me and I'd have to guard him at basketball. And then in baseball, he's pitching and I'm hitting. I'm first baseman. And so there was a rivalry there, but a friendship. Later on in life, I saw him back when we moved back again, which we'll talk about later. And he was sitting in the weight room. I had recognized him, and I went over to talk to him, and he was really sad. And I remember this was after I was saved years later, and he was so good that he got drafted into the in baseball, but he only in the minor leagues, and he never could get past that, and so they cut him loose, and he was pretty dead. So I was able to help him minister to him a little bit because it was a tough time for him. So anyway, when I was in Aromas, I was about 13 years old. Start I had my record player, first record player, my first albums I bought. I even remember what they were. I had In the Gata da Vida, right? It's one of these CBS. You buy one, you get 10 of them, and then you buy one a month. I got involved in that. Of course, being young and little and stupid, I didn't realize I had to pay money every month, so that didn't last long, and I just got cut off their list. But I did get my first records that way, and I can remember Donovan's greatest hits, Donovan Baraba Jacka, In the Gata da Vida by Iron Butterfly. I remember getting what was the name of that band? The Chambers Brothers live. Um, oh, and then the one that stood out a lot to me too was this one called Hot Buttered Soul by um, a guy. I can't remember what was the guy's name. Anyway, he did Super Fly, or I mean, not Superfly, but Shaft, and I can't remember his name right now. But anyway, his album. So I started listening to music. I always loved music, a lot of music, and also I had uh, my friends knew them. Well, one day, me and my sister were invited to church. Me and my sister and best friend. There was one church there. It was a Romas Community Church, which was a Baptist church, and I didn't know the difference between a Baptist, Methodist, or Catholic or anything. I knew there was a difference, but I didn't understand any of that stuff. My family didn't go to church. If we did, I don't remember. And because my mom told me we did, but I don't remember much if we did. And um, so we went down there for a special meeting. Now, this was the beginning, the time of the charismatic movement. I didn't know anything about that. We got in this church, and I'm sure this guy Spiritfield that was there, he was an evangelist type of guy, and he had a hot message going. We all got under conviction, and we got saved. We went up to the front, got saved, and it was real. I mean, my life. I remember coming to the Lord and crying and falling in love with Jesus. And I was a young kid here, and I didn't have any support at home, no friends, but I tried to serve God. I remember once that happened, I remember going to prayer meetings, and the prayer meetings were all with guys my age. Okay, so we sat there. This is the type of prayer meeting they had in this Baptist church. I don't know how they do it in other Baptist church, but in this particular Baptist church, we all sat around the table. We joined hands, and I think there was 4 or 5 of us there. And of course, I was a young kid, and nobody else, no other kids. Kids weren't into prayer meetings. Um, and we prayed, and it was quite frankly really dry, but I did see some godly men, and that had an impact on me. Um, but the church thing. was bothering me because I would go to church sometimes, but what bothered me is the hypocrisy I saw in the church, because a lot of the girls that went to that church that were my age or a little bit older ended up pregnant. So in my mind's thinking, I don't know what's going on with all this. And my parents would have parties, and leaders of the churches, the deacons and elders and so on, and even pastors, sometimes would be over there, and they'd be drunker than Bill Hogan's goat on Saturday night and go to church on Sunday. And so, I just had this seed planted in me that wasn't anti anything, wasn't anti Jesus, but I certainly didn't want to get involved in church. However, when I got saved, I did mention to the pastor there that I feel like I'm called to do something in ministry, and I thought I was called to be a missionary. Well, later on, I understood that calling was there, even at that time. But because I didn't have the support, didn't have any friends, and I tried, I did everything. We did the plays at the church for about 3 months. They had plays. It was Easter time, whatever. It was a big deal. I remember going up to the snow outing or whatever. That was fun, for kids. But I started drifting away. My friends that I had from baseball at school, none of them went to church. And I don't remember. I imagine some of them did, but I didn't know. And if they did, it was a Catholic church or something like that. So I just didn't really get any support on my Christianity from anybody. There's only one church. I didn't have a car. The other churches were maybe 10, 15 miles, 20 miles away that were good churches, spirit-filled churches. I didn't even know anything about that. Never got me filled with the Holy Ghost. And I saw a lot of hypocrisy. So that was kind of something. So eventually what happened was I got pulled away into the wrong kids and the wrong things. And I'm not saying they're bad kids, but I'm saying they were kids that didn't have any spiritual foundation for sure. And we started doing things that we shouldn't have been doing. Got old enough to where I went up to my friend's house, and he had a pretty good sized home on the hill there, and outside in the back was a good big area. And when his mom and dad weren't there, sometimes for whatever reason, he'd have parties, and man, a lot of people came over there, and I'd go over there, and so you had these parties going on, and he would play music, and that's where I was introduced to bands that I really got into that I thought were really cool. 10 years after, and I'll just tell you, 10 years after, and Savoy Brown, which is one of my favorite bands ever, and John Mayall blues. Right, I learned all the English blues and Steve Miller and all that. See, I listened to that, and the pop music, the Beatles and all that. I didn't care. I didn't like that anymore. I liked Eric Clapton, and I started listening to all this music. Well, that also had an influence on me that was sometimes not good. But while we were there at those parties one day, we a few weeks before, I was introduced to alcohol by this guy's sister. We were at the beach, and she had some wine, drank some wine. That made me feel really good, and I thought, man, this is really great. I like this, and so I wanted more of that. Well, they were up there, so I went over and raided the whiskey, um, or the his dad's whiskey deal a little bit. Didn't need much. I was forever 13 years old. And hit that pretty good. And then I went out back, and people were smoking pot. So I just stood over there with them, and when it came around, I take a drag off of it. Man, I mean, I got shellacked. I don't know what was in that, but it probably was spiked with something else. It just sent me into just oblivion, and it was a terrible experience. But that's because it was too strong, and I didn't know what I was doing and so on. But anyway, that's when I started smoking pot. And so we started drinking, started using drugs. And I always said this, I'll drink, but I'll never use marijuana. Well, that happened really quick. And then I'll use marijuana, but I'll never use anything else. But to see, that's that slippery slope that you get involved in with that. So I was out there. It didn't take me long. I kind of forgot about God. I didn't ever reject God. I just didn't walk with Him. I didn't serve Him. I didn't read the Bible anymore. I just went wholeheartedly out into this world. The only time I ever even came around um, church was when we were on a field trip at school. We would go visit a mission. And I remember going to the mission and I felt this wonderful peace there. Always when I went to missions, I just sit there inside quietly. I thought this is interesting. It's very peaceful here, and I would contemplate on God. I'm sure in my own way I was talking to Him, not really praying, but just I don't know, reaching out. But anyway, that's the way it was. I got totally caught up in this partying lifestyle at an early age, doing things I shouldn't have been doing, even with girls and stuff. And 13, 14, 15 years old, you get your hormones going and all that. It caused a lot of problems. My parents were not Christians. Both my parents smoked. I remember the first time I ever smoked a cigarette. I was walking down the road there in Aromas, and I remember looking down at the ground. Just walk along, and then sure enough, there was a pack of. It's how the devil is. Sure enough, there was a pack of cigarettes sitting right there, and it was not. Must have fallen out. There was a full pack. It was not wet. They were not wet or anything. They're perfect. I went over and picked it up, looked at it. I go, man, look at these cigarettes. If I had a, a match, I might smoke one of there. Try one of these. And lo and behold, I looked down again and somewhere else, and there's a package of matches. And so I took that cigarette, popped it in my mouth, and fired that thing up and coughed like my lung out, like you always do when you first start that. But that I started smoking cigarettes, and I would take a pack of cigarettes from my mother's. She had cartons of them, and they smoked so much, man. Everybody smoked at that time. They smoked so much you would never even know anything was gone. So I'd take a pack, a soft pack, not one of those box ones, but a soft one, and we would cut a hole in our. We had light jackets because California, light jacket hole where your pocket was that would go all the way around to the back of your jacket, and put the cigarettes in there, and people wouldn't see them. You could keep them there. And because my parents smoked, they couldn't smell me. So I started smoking occasionally, and it got to be quite a habit. And so, I had smoking, I was drinking, I was, doing things with girls that I shouldn't, and I was doing the whole thing. They call it, I guess sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Though I was a little young for the sex yet, I was getting there. And that was what I was pursuing to try to find happiness and peace. And so that became an issue. And that was really starting to get to be kind of rough because things were happening in my parents' life that weren't good. I mean, there would be a lot of fighting and there would be discord. And my dad, who was really good when I was younger, would take me hunting here, this and that. He became busier and busier. And my mother, who was the best mother you could ever have growing up, she was a wonderful mother. I remember one time in Colorado where we were playing baseball out there in that vacant lot. I told you about that. And while we were playing baseball, this guy in this car, this teenager, came ripping through that parking lot, almost hit the kids, went out the other side, and the police officer was right on him with the lights going and everything, ran right past us, pulled him over there. Hit my mother, she was the first, she ran over to that guy's car, and the cop, he put him in his car, and he, locked the doors. He could see my mother coming. Boy, she unloaded. I had never heard my mom, she used every cuss word known to mankind, but I got to tell you something. She probably made some up because she was so hopping mad. But she was a good mother. She took care of us always when we were sick. She was a great mother. But during this time in Aroma, something happened to my mother. The doctor said she needed a hysterectomy. Why? I don't know today. I never asked. All I know is that I was around 30 years old, and all I know is that when she had that hysterectomy, something changed in her, and it was almost like she reverted back to being a teenager. She started to dress different. She started to look different. Me and her, relationship got weird. My dad's relationship got weird, and he wasn't there, and I don't think he wanted to come home to that, so he stayed at work a lot, that type of thing. You have to understand, my parents were good people, but he he they're both depression kids. He was a World War II veteran and a hero in the World War II. And some of the stuff that happened to him, you see, I didn't understand that at the time. But so this is all going on, and I was not getting the discipline and a lot of the things that I really needed at home at that time. So I was starting to run. That's what begins to happen when you start moving out like that. And I didn't have the foundation church. I don't understand kids. It's hard for me to fathom that kids can get saved, filled with the Holy Ghost, and have a good church, but yet then run off. I suppose it's just the draw of the world, like it was for me. This is why it's important for our youth workers and stuff to get kids filled with the Holy Ghost, get them into the Word as quickly as possible, and get them involved in church as quickly as possible. I want to get people to get involved. I got all my grandkids working in church because they look forward to it. They enjoy it. They come to church, and it's the place where we all meet in the community, and that's how it was up to that time. It stopped about that time. Community place to meet was church. That was the center of the community, the center of the fellowship, and so on. And this began to change, and we started getting all this liberal thinking and stuff coming into the 60s, the abortion and the prayer out of schools. All that happened at the same time that I was going through these things. And so by the time my family or my dad got promoted and decided that he was going to move up to Concord, California, which is a large area, city, even bigger now than it was then, I was pretty much not serving God at all. And so my Christianity, it was put away till 22 years old. And when I moved up to Concord, I think it was probably about 15 years old, 16 years old, because I started out right in the high school, which was 16 as a freshman. I can't remember exactly. Might have been a year before that, but everything was different. It was a large city. We'll leave it at that until and we had many, many more kids and a lot more temptation, a lot more stuff going on. And I'll talk about that because I really like small towns. We would drive up in the mountains, me and my friends for years. When I was in Concord, and I would remember back to Aromas, and I remember back to Colorado, and I remember back to all the other places I had lived. And this big city thing, man, I couldn't stand it. It was depressing to me. And I remember going up in the mountains, and me and my friend be driving along. We'd go through some small town out in the mountains. I say, someday I'm going to live in a small town like this. And it took a while, but at 40 years of my life, 40 something, I think 44 years old, we ended up here in beautiful Wisconsin, Door County, this really small but beautiful place with small towns, beautiful towns just like that, all up and down the peninsula. Even Green Bay really is not a large city, and outside of Green Bay, there's many beautiful little suburbs and stuff. It's a beautiful place, wonderful place to live. But anyway, I'll digress. I want to stop it here because I want to remember where I stopped. We were moving to Concord, California. We got into a little house on a circle drive called Montreal Circle. And this was things begin to change in my life, not for the better, but for the worse. Until next time, this is Pastor Tom. I love you and praying for you. Remember, starve your faith, feed your faith, starve your doubts to death. I said that wrong. And till next time, God bless you.